Hello guys! Today's video, if you hadn't guessed from the title, is about a condition called synesthesia. Now, synesthesia is a neurological condition which affects up to 4% of the population, roughly. And basically what it is wires in your brain are crossed, so all of your senses are wired up and they go where they're supposed to go. But in synesthesia, these wires can get crossed, so your senses can get all jumbled up. So, for example, some people can hear sounds, or they can see sounds, I should say. They can kind of taste sounds, or they can smell sounds, and certain things just basically aren't how they should be, or they might taste smells, even though that kind of happens to an extent anyway, but it's to more of an extent. There are a lot of musicians and well-known people that have or did have synesthesia. Two of which you might know are Devin Townsend and Jimi Hendrix. Now, Devin Townsend has a bit of an unusual one because he sees sounds as shapes. So his music is, to him, he'll go like, "Oh, what chord is that?" Someone will say, and he'll go, "I don't know, the round one." And Jimi Hendrix, for example, saw, I think it was chords as colours. I assume they were flat colours, so we would see maybe a C as blue. So it can affect people in really different ways, and it is a really personal experience. So synesthesia is different for everyone. The fundamentals of it are the same, but what people see, or whatever version they have, taste, etc., can vary from person to person. So people won't see or taste the same thing as someone else with the same kind of synesthesia, if that makes sense. So I kind of wanted to talk about my experience with it because I've not heard anyone talk about it in the way I see it. So I wanted to get this out there because I was wondering if any of you guys had a similar experience with it. So essentially how it affects me is, well, I should go into this first. They say babies are all born with this, and it basically aids you in how you grow. Just going back to how it's actually caused, because I think it's important to get this out there. There's a theory, which obviously isn't certain, that all babies are born with this, and it's how your brain learns most quickly. So it can associate, say, a sound with a colour, for example, and remember it much quicker than just remembering the sound and what that means in an abstract form, if that makes sense. They don't know this for sure, but basically they're thinking adults who have this, their brain kind of didn't rewire those to where they're supposed to be rewired later in life. So this is basically how it ends up. But for me, the way I see music and sounds is I'll see a song as a whole. Let's use a song for an example first, because I find it the easiest. So I'll see the song as a whole, and each individual instrument I can kind of focus in on, and each individual thing, even every drum, has its own look, and I see them in textures and colours. So those textures will kind of have colours and they'll move around. So for example, a cymbal like a hi-hat, quite often an open hi-hat, looks to me, I'm going to do my best to explain these, but they're kind of like things that don't necessarily exist in the real world, so they're a bit hard to get across, but I'll do my best to explain these in real world terms. So an open hi-hat, when someone goes ksh, like that, looks like there's a golden browny kind of line here, and it smoothly, what's the word, like almost drips down, and it's got an almost, what's the word, like semi-see-through texture, I can't think of the word, like slightly transparent texture of it dripping down. And it's not like water droplets, it's like, say you're looking at a waveform and it go kind of spiky like that. It's like that, but smoother. So say someone went with a piece of gold paint and had that waveform and they smudged it and it kind of smudged down. That's what a cymbal looks like to me. And then obviously each individual drum has its own look, depending on how they're tuned and stuff like that can all affect it, so it's really quite complex. There's no way I could go into every single thing, but let's say, for example, the first tom, that kind of looks to me like a circle, and it's usually white. That's the most common one because they're most commonly tuned in a way that looks like that to me for some reason. And as you go down the toms, they get darker in colour. So let's say someone's hitting it like that, I'll see that kind of thing. But then obviously zooming out into the rest of the song, the wider spectrum of a song, the song itself will have a colour and a texture and things going on depending on which part of the song we're in. And it's kind of like the whole song will have an overall thing, and then certain parts of the song will have a really strong image that kind of changes and brings it motion. So the song can have a colour and a texture that's overlaid on top of it. So I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this, because it's like there's so much of it that it's hard to really pinpoint it and drag it out and explain it. But let's say, we'll go with guitars first, because if I was to pinpoint the guitar, certain guitar tones can have different textures as well. So on most guitar tones, because I know obviously there are thousands, most of them have a kind of smooth look with little pinpricks, kind of like a fizzy kind of looking thing, but they're quite smooth, if that makes any sense. So they'll quite often be either a black kind of colour with white pinpricks, or again like a more golden browny colour. But again, that can vary depending on what tune is being played in the song. That can really lead the way it looks and the colours that it looks like. So basically it's all a bit mental, because everyone's voice has a different look to me as well. So for example, John Frusciante's voice to me is, I know I keep mentioning this colour, but it's because it's one of my favourites to see. It's really visually beautiful, so it always stands out to me. Is John Frusciante's has a kind of that same kind of golden brown kind of colour, and it's really rich looking. And let's say it's on a line like this, and you know, if you get a spider web that has droplets of water on it, it kind of looks like that, but in that golden brown colour when he sings. And the more gravelly he makes his voice, the more those droplets stand out, and the smoother it goes, the more of just like a straight line it is, rather than having the droplets on it. But that is pretty much what his voice looks like, even when he talks. So another example would be Maynard James Keenan, so a totally different kind of voice. His is white and got a kind of smoky look to it. It's a really strange looking voice, but I absolutely love his voice. It's really smooth and just kind of, yeah, it just kind of floats about. So I really enjoy seeing that. But yeah, again, certain albums as well have different looks to them. So let's say 10,000 Days. So let's go on these two examples to narrow it down. So with Tool, 10,000 Days, that has a massively visual look to me. The whole thing is, the album overall, the general colours that it is are really similar to the album artwork. So it's all kind of like greys and blacks and dark bluey kind of greys. And those kind of patterns that you see on Alex Gray's artwork for that album. So it's a really dark looking album, but I love it because with Maynard's kind of smoky white vocals over the top, it's really cool looking. And the other one is, well, yeah, again, that one has a really kind of pristine, almost rounded look to it. And a lot of the textures, it has a lot of those water droplet textures on it. So like on Wings from Marie, there's a kind of bubbly sound. And to me, that looks like when you get fizz. If you look at, say, a drink of lemonade or something and you see the bubbles fizzing up to the top, it kind of looks like that. And there's a lot of stuff in that album that kind of looks that way. But another one would be To Record Only Water for 10 Days by John Frusciante. And that album has a massively strong overlay on it. Like, the whole thing all looks really the same to me, as in, like, every song has its own individual look, and each instrument in the song looks a certain way, but then there's like an overlay on top of those songs which all looks the same. So that's kind of like I want to say like a film grainy kind of thing. It has an almost oldie worldy film kind of look over the top of it. And I didn't realise, but apparently he recorded all of those songs in exactly the same way with all the same gear on the same setup. So I guess it makes sense that it all kind of ties in and looks the same way. But that album to me is actually largely blue with bits of orange. So again, the artwork actually matches up. And I find it really interesting to see whether the artwork to an album ends up matching up with what I see or whether it doesn't. But it has a massively strong visual to me, that album. And they can kind of have almost worlds to them. I know that sounds a bit daft, but that album to me feels like a time and a place. And not just in a nostalgic way, it's like it has its own place that you can kind of get a glimpse into, and it's really quite grainy and almost like when you get the golden hour in summer and you get all the greens and blues looking into this place, but it's all like, I don't know, it's just really pretty, and I like being able to kind of disappear into that kind of place and see all that stuff. Because another song by John Frusciante, I think it's Untitled Number 8, I get all the titles mixed up, but that to me all looks like a cardboard coloured room, and there's a sofa in it and two people, and they're kind of moving around as the song goes, and it is literally like being in a room, but there's no kind of details. It's all like just like a flat browny cardboardy kind of colour. So hopefully that's kind of an insight into the kind of spaces and visuals that I see. So again, other genres can also have different looks. So electronic music to me has a massively strong look. That one quite often is really bright and neon. So it will often have a black background, and then it will have like lights almost. You know, say if you had like LED lights that look really smooth, they're not sharp edged, they're really rounded edges, and they're quite often bright blues and pinks, and yeah, it's all quite cool. They're usually kind of round colours or floaty line kind of colours on a black background. That is the general gist of how that genre looks to me. Trying to remember everything that goes on because there's so much without hearing it all. It's like trying to keep track of it. But I've also used it to identify the era of a song. So let's say there's a song from the 60s. That to me, the way it's recorded has a certain look. Again, it has that filter over the top of what's underneath that filter actually going on within the song. So I can use it to kind of get within the ballpark of the era that it came out in without hearing too much of the song, but also I've actually used it to pinpoint the exact year that something came out, because things changed, I've found, throughout the years that they came out. And so like 70s songs, early 70s songs are massively different to the late 70s songs. You can see a really big change, and I find it really fun to kind of try and guess where they are and see if it matches up to what I'm seeing, because most of the time it does. So I think it's not a bad skill to have. But yeah, so another thing is I also have my pedal board set up as colour coded. So I'm going to show you that now because I thought it might be quite an interesting insight maybe to talk through why they are the colours they are, and show you each effect and tell you how that effect looks to me, because every guitar effect, every guitar tone all kind of looks different to me. So yeah, here we go. Okay, so here we have my pedal board. So I'm going to talk you through each thing and why they are the colours they are. So first up we have the reverse, which is basically this bluey kind of colour. It's quite I don't know what you would call it, it's not turquoise, but it's quite a bright blue. and that is the reverse effect. So the way that looks to me is kind of like, you know, in cartoons where they draw wind and it kind of shoots across the screen, kind of like darting across. That's kind of the way it looks, but obviously blue. So this is what it sounds like. Yeah, quite a cool effect. So it basically looks like blue things doing this across the screen, across my eyes I should say. But I really like that effect and the way it looks. The next one is the Obi-Wan, which is basically a step filter. So this one is purple, and the colour of purple light on this is really close to the actual colour it looks to me. And basically it looks like kind of a really thick liquid that bubbles, and not just little bubbles but like big kind of, yeah, like if you'd imagine some kind of witch's cauldron or something like that, and it's like a thick purple liquid, and basically it sounds like this. So that's how that one looks. Apparently that's a really visual effect anyway, because Dave was telling me even he kind of sees something that one looks like. So let me know if you do as well, because I can imagine that is quite a visual effect anyway. But the next one is Destroy, and that is basically a distortion pedal, but with the gain not too high up, so it's just adding a bit of crunch, and crunch is exactly what it looks like. So the colour I associate it with is this orange, and basically distortions can look all kind of different ways. So the more gain they have, the closer together the texture looks, but it's all kind of like a, I want to say kind of fizzy kind of looking thing, but not fizzy, if that makes any kind of sense. So the less gain it has, the further apart the texture looks. So this one looks more kind of like crunchy to me, basically. That's how I would describe it, but this is what it sounds like. So, next one is the Kill, and that is basically a distortion but with more gain, like I was saying. So you can imagine this one looks closer together and smoother, and it also has a phase 90 underneath it, which I love. My brilliant idea, my 70s dream pedal this is. But basically the distortion looks a certain way, so it's got that closer together kind of fizzy looking, smoother kind of texture to it, and it's with the phase 90 underneath, it's got this kind of movement that kind of does this with the phase 90, if that makes any sense. So together it looks pretty cool, and I associate it with this kind of deep red colour. And I use this in the Dave Simpson Trio song It Was You, because, well, it sounds pretty kind of terrifying, like the song. And the song, as you can imagine, because I'm going to talk about the particle verb as well, as you probably spotted if you can see the lights. Particle verb is white. So that song to me is a combination of red and white mainly. So that song has a really strong association with two colours, which is those two. So this is what the kill button sounds like. Very cool. So obviously that section of the song looks red to me, like this colour. And the next one is the particle verb, which is the other effect I use on that song. That one obviously is white to me, and like most reverbs, it looks like a smoky, kind of hazy, white, transparent kind of colour. It's got that kind of texture as well to it. But this one is a bit different because it's basically a reverb that feeds into itself. So there's a texture on top of that, which is kind of like sparkly kind of texture. It's not glittery, but it's a kind of like, I don't know. I'll give it a play and tell you what I see, if I can explain it. But this is what it sounds like. Yeah, it's got an almost... Sparkly is the only word I can think of, but it's basically like little holes that poke through it, and little textures that kind of ruffle up the smoky, smooth nature of it and kind of like crumple it, and it looks really cool. And then the very last one is the delay, which is this kind of turquoisey colour I've got here. And basically what that looks like is really similar to the electronic music thing I was talking about with the neon lights. And yeah, you'll get used to that noise. It happens hundreds of times every day. But that's a story for another time. More neurological fun. But anyway, this is the delay one, and it basically looks like little lights that, the same way as what I described with the electronic music, but more natural, so less electronic looking, basically. And it looks mainly that turquoisey kind of colour, so this is what it sounds like if I turn the volume up. Quite like that. And yeah, basically, as you can imagine, that has the kind of neon light pulsing like that in that turquoisey colour. So it's all really cool to me. I hope it is to you. I hope it's somewhat interesting, but I've been asked about it before, so I kind of wanted to share a more in-depth kind of explanation of it, because it's really hard to write this stuff down, because a lot of people ask me and it's like, well, I can't put it all in text, so I'll just make a video. And hopefully it's been somewhat kind of interesting, but there's more, and it's not just songs that I see, and it's not only things that I see either. There's the odd kind of thing that I smell, but I'm going to put this away and go further into detail about that in a second, so see you in a minute. I've made a friend. He's quite cute, but anyway, I don't know where he's gone now. Oh god. Yeah, what was that you mentioned about smelling things? So, as you probably guessed, from the start of this video where I was saying about certain people have different kinds where they can smell things that they should only see. I don't have this to a massive extent, but I do have it where certain levels in games I've smelled. It's like it happens at really random times. So in the game Half-Life, there's a level called On a Rail, and basically what that level smells like to me, I have no idea why I can smell this, but it smells like smoke and oil. But it's kind of like not cigarette smoke, it's like a smoky, fiery kind of smoke, but in kind of industrial smelling. And the whole game has a kind of smoky smell to it, but that one in particular has that oily smell over the top, and I can smell it really strongly. So there's the odd thing like that. And there's the occasional time where I've tasted words and things like that. Again, that really is a lot more rare for me. It doesn't happen very often. But I'm trying to think of an example, because I know it's happened and someone will say something and it'll be like, ugh, or there will be some kind of sound and I don't like the way it tastes because it'll be really horrible. But yeah, so that's happened to me, but obviously I don't have quite as much the same experience as other people that have mainly that kind of form, but I thought it would be worth mentioning it to raise awareness that that kind of thing exists anyway. Because the other thing is I can see colours on numbers, days of the month, days of the week, and months of the month, letters and names and certain words and stuff like that. So, for example, numbers, I can talk you through them. So 0 is kind of a see-through-y colour, 1 is white, 2 is pink, 3 is yellow, 4 is purple, 5 is blue, 6 is orange, 7 is green, 8 is red, 9 is brown, and 10 is black and white. So there you go. Again, certain thing, but these are like flat colours, so these don't have a texture. They're just like, that number is that colour, if that makes any sense. Same goes with any words or months and stuff like that. But the thing about this condition as well is, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, if you've got it as well, where I can use it to know what a song is within a split second because I recognise it visually as well. So it's almost like having an extra sense of what it is. So a song can play literally a split second and I'll be like, oh, it's that song, because I can see it straight away and I recognise the visual stamp of it. Not every single time, but most of the time, I would say. And I always remember I was at a school disco years ago, back when I actually went to school, because I was home educated for years, but most of my school life. But anyway, I was at a school disco and there was this game that we were trying to play, a competition, where the DJ would play a bit of a song, see which kid could guess it the quickest. And yeah, basically I ended up confusing the DJ because they all would have been about 6 at the time, and he would play it literally like not even a second of the song. It'd be like, duh, and he'd think, yeah, I've really got her this time, she'll never get this one, no one will get it. And I still knew what the song was, and in the end it turned into him actually trying to catch me out. Not in a horrible way, I think he was just a bit confused at how, but basically, one, I've always loved music and like had a kind of ear for it anyway and been kind of tuned into it, but because I could have that visual element as well, but I didn't know what was going on at the time. Like I thought everyone had that. That was basically what was going on. I could see it straight away. And the same things happened again with like, because I can see everything, it's not just music. All sounds kind of have, or most sounds have a look to me. My mum was sat all the way across the living room, and for a split second she accidentally clicked on a video. And I said, was that Shrek's voice? And she goes, yeah. How did you know that? And again, it was because I could see what his voice looked like. I knew exactly what line it was. It was the onions have layers line. And yeah, it's just like things like that really stand out to me. So I think in a way it's almost quite a weird thing to have, I guess. Like, it's quite helpful in a lot of ways. Because I was using it with Dave earlier to dial in a tone, and we were A-Bing some things, and because he wants to know how it looks to me, like, does it look visually similar? Because I can use it to kind of know how someone plays something. Like, I'll know how much pressure, not all the time, but like, it can happen. I'll know how much pressure someone's putting on, or like, just I can take a good stab at how someone's playing something because I can try and get it to visually, when I play it, look how it does when they play it. And the same goes for dialing in tones and stuff like that. And Dave was saying, oh, so what does this look like to you compared to another tone? And I was saying, well, it looks kind of blocky, whereas the other one looks smoother. And he was going, it's really interesting you've said that, because on a waveform, that actually does come up as a blocky kind of square look, which I had no idea. So I thought that was really interesting that it looked that way. But yeah, make of that what you will. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting. But again, I should say, seeing all this stuff, it's not like it blinds you. It's only in your mind's eye, but you know it's there. And certain things will have a stronger image than others. Some will be more further back kind of thing. They'll be less vivid. But everything in life looks a certain way to me. But it doesn't really... I don't find it blinding or anything like that unless... let's say something's really loud all of a sudden, like if someone screams, that can kind of white out my vision or red out my vision briefly while it happens, but that's kind of the only time. It's only if something's really loud and sudden that it really is like right in front of my eyes. Otherwise it's not blinding or anything like that, because it's just in your mind's eye, but it's like an immediate response. And the only other way I would say it sometimes negatively affects me is if, let's say, if something's really loud, like if I have to eat at a gig or anything like that, I actually can't taste my food. But again, that doesn't really bother me. It's not woe is me, it's just a thing. To me, I actually find it kind of amusing, because if something's really loud, it basically I just can't taste. And I've never heard of that happening to anyone else. So if it does, let me know, because I'd be really interested to find out, basically. But yeah, so I hope that's kind of summed it up. Again, there's so much to go into, because you've got so many different ways it can affect people, and so many different things that I can see all within a song. So like as I was saying, there's the song as a whole, which has all these different colours and textures going on, and then I can almost focus in and zoom in on a certain bit of the song, like a certain instrument going on, or certain drums, specific cymbals and stuff like that. It's people's voices, and I can use it to kind of pick out what's going on in a song. So if I'm trying to pick out a certain line that's kind of hard to hear, it helps to be able to see it as well, because I can pick out and almost follow it along like what I'm seeing. So I hope this was somewhat interesting. Again, I've always tried to explain this in text to people when they ask, but it, again, you can probably tell by the length of this video, it's probably way too long, but I may try and do one that's more concise. But again, it's a difficult thing to pigeonhole into a really short video without kind of going off on a tangent, because there's so many layers to it, no pun intended. But I hope it's kind of been somewhat interesting and a bit of an insight, and hopefully I've explained it all okay. If there's anything you want to know, I would love to do my best to answer your question. And if there's anything you want to see, like I was thinking maybe at some point I might do a video where I listen to a song or a sound that you suggest, and I'll tell you what I see at certain points of that song, what each instrument looks like, and just basically what I see and how it is in my head, if that makes any sense. So if there's anything like that, any sound, any song that you want me to kind of pick apart and let you know, then yeah, give me a shout. I would love to kind of do that, or answer any questions. If you did enjoy this video, please consider, one, subscribing, because it really helps, but I do have a Patreon as well, which basically will enable me to make more YouTube videos and better ones than what I am, but and just basically will be a massive help. So if you do feel so inclined and you're in a position to, there is a Patreon, but there's absolutely no pressure at all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.